Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, March 3rd. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the Deebo Samuel trade that saw Washington send a fifth-round pick to San Francisco in exchange for the 2021 All-Pro receiver, Deebo Samuel. In this segment, we turn our attention to another team in California and their negotiations with one Matthew Stafford. The Rams and Matthew Stafford have reportedly agreed on a restructured contract. We'll talk about what that means for him, what it means as repercussions continue to go around the league, and much more. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, March 3rd. But like I was saying, we are going to get into a little bit on Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, a top 8 quarterback in my opinion, one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFC, gets his big money finally. He was one of the first big dominoes that needed to fall this NFL offseason. Of course, there are a lot of QB needy teams, whether it be the Jets, the Giants, the Steelers, the Raiders, the Titans, the Browns. There are a lot of QB needy teams out there that were chomping at the bit to go and get Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford would have been and still was the best quarterback on the market, even at age 37, after nearly leading the Rams to upset the future Super Bowl champions in the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a team that pushed them to the brink, all the way down to a potential game-winning drive in the snow, got all the way down to about the 30-yard line, about 30 yards away from potentially sending it to overtime. Instead, Eagles go on to win their second NFL championship in the Super Bowl era, right? But Matthew Stafford was a part of lots of rumors. One of the biggest and most prevalent ones that we talked about on Friday, were with the Raiders and the Giants. But now he has decided to come back. He went and tested the market. The Rams gave him the ability to see what else he could get out there. And reports are he was being offered a lot. The Raiders and the Giants were both reportedly offering around $60 million a year. He turns around and takes what is considered to be a discount for the Rams. Now, it hasn't come out exactly how much the discount is, but it does say that he's taking significantly less than what he would have gotten if he had gone to the Raiders or the Giants. Now, those two were the teams that were really in on Matthew Stafford. Now, it doesn't seem like the Rams were ever truly interested in getting off of Matthew Stafford. They were just trying to figure out what it would take to keep him around. And what it would take is still exact numbers are a mystery, but he gets quote-unquote a big raise in 2025 and some more guarantees in 2026. Of course, it seemed like the Raiders were on track to get him after we saw a coincidental meeting between him and Tom Brady at a ski resort. The Giants had been rumored around him for a long time. But let's take a look at the fallout here, right? He decides to come back to the Rams. Now the Rams don't need that quarterback. They're no longer in that quarterback market. One of the big guys that was expecting to potentially replace Matthew Stafford was Aaron Rodgers. And for Aaron Rodgers, this Rams gig would have been by far the best one out there. Right now, Aaron Rodgers is not talked about in the highest regard. And I think there's a fair argument to say that he might be washed at this point. But Aaron Rodgers is also a quarterback that, when you look at the passing numbers, was near identical with the MVP winner, Josh Allen. He had 100 more yards, same amount of touchdowns, a couple more interceptions, right? Obviously, that's a little bit misleading because Josh Allen does so much else to help your team, especially on the ground, with his huge frame, his huge body, his ability to make the plays that Aaron Rodgers just doesn't have the athleticism or the ability to do anymore, right? But Aaron Rodgers still is a quarterback that I believe can be a winning quarterback in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers, his best option out there was going to be the Rams. It doesn't seem like the Steelers' option is super real. It seems like they're pretty much set on Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, leading more towards Justin Fields. But now where does he go? One of those teams that has turned their attention to them is the New York Giants. The New York Giants have been starved for a quarterback. They were all in on Matthew Stafford. Now they say, you know what? We want another bridge quarterback. At that pick number 3, if they don't get their guy, or maybe they think that they want a guy to be there to let a guy like Shedeur Sanders, or if they trade up Cam Ward to sit behind for a little bit. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is really that guy. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is really the right guy to bring in and say, you know what, I want you to be a mentor. He didn't really do it for Jordan Love, although I think eventually they kind of figured it out. He definitely didn't do it for Zach Wilson, although I'm not sure how well Zach Wilson would have turned out with or without him. But the Giants are very interested in Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, I don't know how interested he is in them. But if he doesn't go to the Giants, it seems like he's taking a backup gig, right? Again, a lot of people are pointing out the Minnesota Vikings to either start the season for a little bit ahead of J.J. McCarthy. J.J. McCarthy, who really loves Aaron Rodgers. He's got a little bit of that Aaron Rodgers energy-esque to him as well, and complete that Brett Favre arc that he is so close to completing right now. But that honestly might be option 2. Right? He's not going to get the starting gig in a lot of places. A lot of teams are just not going to be able to sit with what he does off the field at the level of play he's giving you. If he was a quiet quarterback, if he sat back and did nothing, like Russell Wilson, for instance, more teams would be interested. I guarantee you teams would be knocking at his door, lining up down the block to bring him in if he just wasn't as loud as he was. But that's what you're going to get. You got to take the good with the bad with Aaron Rodgers, and these teams understand that, right? So because of that, his suitor list is significantly dwindled from what you might expect a former 4-time MVP, Super Bowl champion quarterback who still is at least a league average quarterback to be getting, especially when there's so many quarterback-needy teams and not so many quarterbacks in free agency or the draft this year. But Aaron Rodgers looks like the Giants are the number one customer right now, and if not, he might just have to take a backup role or a placeholder role while waiting for someone to get healthy, either in Minnesota or maybe a place like Tennessee or Cleveland. But the bigger fallout, I think, goes with the Raiders, because the Raiders truly were Matthew Stafford or bust, from what it seems. A report came out that the Raiders weren't super interested in Sam Darnold eventually, or Russell Wilson originally, right? Russell Wilson would reunite with Pete Carroll. Sam Darnold looking for a place to start. But now that they don't have Matthew Stafford, do they turn back their attention to a Russell Wilson? Is Russell Wilson back on the table? I think he absolutely should be. The two options, Russell Wilson and Sam Darnold, probably are the best options. Do they go back to Jimmy G? That didn't work. I doubt that they go and sign him. But Russell Wilson is someone that I think could fit really well. Of course, he already has that previous success. We talk about the NFL. We just talked about Deebo going to Washington. A lot of that, and a lot of the reason I think that Washington was willing to make this trade was because Adam Peters, the GM, has a relationship with Deebo Samuel, has a relationship within the 49ers organization, and decided that he was willing to take the risk. We have Pete Carroll now, who knows Russell Wilson very well, had his most successful years with Russell Wilson in the NFL. That's a reunion that I think could work pretty well. Sam Darnold, he doesn't really know as well. And I am not on that Sam Darnold hype train. I understand if you are. He had a good season last year. He led a very successful offense, but it was a stacked offense that I truly believe any half-competent quarterback could succeed in. Succeed to 14 wins? Maybe not. But make a playoff run with it? Yeah, that's a very good situation to be in, and I think J.J. McCarthy is going to get overrated because of that. But I digress. The fallout for the Raiders, it seems like they're leaning towards Russell Wilson. A reunion over there, but Sam Darnold is going to require more money, is going to be a little bit younger. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense for the Raiders to dump that much money into what would be a bridge quarterback for them, which kind of leaves Sam Darnold in the wins. Where does he go? Sam Darnold, I think, is going to be always the bridesmaid, never the bride in this offseason. He's someone that really tanked his stock with his last couple of performances, and recency bias is a real thing in the NFL. Recency bias is something that truly does hurt a lot of these guys that try and make a name for themselves, that are trying to get that big money contract. It either hurts or it helps them a lot, right? And for Sam Darnold, it's certainly hurting him. His last 2 times out on the field were definitely his worst 2 games of the seasons, and they were in the biggest moments. He cost himself a contract that could have been upwards of $50 million a year to now not even sure if he's going to crack that 45 mark, right? Sam Darnold, I think at this point, I don't think Minnesota wants him back. They've got the next guy waiting in the wings. I think he might end up on the Browns, which I don't think would be a good spot for him. The Browns looking for the next guy at number 2, especially if they move off of Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett, who they doubled down and said that they're not trading him, although Myles Garrett himself doubled down and said, I don't care if you make me the highest paid non-quarterback in the history of the NFL, which reportedly was the offer on the table. I don't want to play in Cleveland. So something's got to give at some point, and I think it's going to be the Browns that are going to have to give at this point because, I mean, he could hold out, right? The Browns need to get something. It's kind of a disaster if Myles Garrett holds out at that point, and I think he's got a little bit more leverage than the Browns do. Sam Darnold might just end up over there. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think of Matthew Stafford? Matthew Stafford returning to the Rams was the right decision for him. It was the right decision for the Rams, and I'm glad they came to it. I'm glad they figured out that money. They needed to figure that out. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we switch over to college basketball. It is March. So we are going to take a look at one of the bigger stories around college basketball right now, and that is St. John's. Also, Rick Pitino, the head coach of St. John's, has a really interesting recruiting strategy that I'm not sure if it's going to be good or bad for the future of college basketball. We're going to talk about that and much more coming up next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.